What if the foods we eat every day are doing far more than simply satisfying our hunger? What if the modern food environment, the products marketed as convenient, healthy, or harmless, is quietly influencing our bodies in ways we barely understand? In Metabolic, The Lure and the Lies of Processed Food, Nutrition and Modern Medicine, Dr. Robert H. Lustig takes us on a revealing journey into the complex relationship between food, metabolism, disease, and modern medicine. For decades, we have been told to count calories, eat less, exercise more, and trust that modern medicine will protect us when our health begins to fail. Yet, despite all this advice, chronic diseases linked to metabolic dysfunction continue to affect millions of people around the world. Why? According to Lustig, the answer may lie deeper than personal discipline or simple calorie counting. In this thought-provoking book, Lustig challenges many of the assumptions we have accepted about nutrition and health. He explores how processed foods can affect the body's metabolic systems, why not all calories behave in the same way, and how the modern food industry may profit from products that leave us wanting more. At the same time, he examines the limitations of a medical system that often focuses on treating symptoms rather than addressing their underlying causes. But Metabolic is not simply a book about what is wrong with our food system. It is an invitation to become more curious, more informed, and more aware of the choices we make every day. Through science, evidence, and powerful arguments, Robert Lustig encourages us to look beyond marketing labels and popular nutrition myths and ask a more important question: what is our food really doing to us? So, as we begin this journey, keep an open mind. Some of the ideas you are about to discover may challenge what you thought you knew about health, food, and medicine. And if you enjoy discovering powerful ideas that can change the way you see the world, join Wiser Reads today, because every book we explore together could bring us one step closer to a wiser, healthier, and more meaningful life. The Metabolic Crisis: Understanding Modern Disease. In Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig argues that many of the chronic diseases affecting modern society cannot be understood simply as problems of individual choices or excessive calorie consumption. Instead, he directs attention toward metabolic dysfunction, the way our bodies process and use energy, and how modern lifestyles and food environments can disrupt these processes. Lustig explains that conditions such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, fatty liver disease, and other chronic disorders often share underlying metabolic problems. Rather than viewing each disease as an isolated issue, he encourages readers to recognize the connections between them. A central argument is that the quality of food matters, not just the number of calories it contains. Highly processed foods can alter hunger, satiety, blood sugar regulation, and the way the body stores and uses energy. When these effects occur repeatedly, they may contribute to long-term metabolic imbalance. The book also challenges the idea that personal willpower alone can solve the modern health crisis. People are surrounded by inexpensive, convenient, highly processed foods designed to be appealing and easy to consume. This environment can make healthy choices considerably more difficult. Lustig further examines how modern medicine often manages individual diseases with medications and procedures, while paying less attention to the environmental and nutritional factors that may contribute to them. His broader message is that treating symptoms is not always enough. Understanding and addressing underlying causes is essential. Ultimately, the metabolic crisis presents modern disease as more than a collection of unrelated health problems. It is part of a larger metabolic challenge shaped by food, lifestyle, biology, and the systems surrounding us. The chapter encourages readers to reconsider conventional ideas about nutrition and to think more deeply about how our everyday environment influences long-term health. Processed food: the lure that keeps us eating. In this section of Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig examines how modern processed foods have transformed the way we eat and why they can be so difficult to resist. He argues that the problem is not simply that people lack discipline, but that many foods in today's environment are specifically formulated to be convenient, highly appealing, and easy to consume repeatedly. Lustig draws attention to the difference between whole foods and ultra-processed products. Whole foods generally contain their natural structure, nutrients, and fiber, while extensive processing can alter food in ways that make it easier to eat quickly and in larger quantities. Added sugars and other refined ingredients can also increase the energy density and palatability of these products. According to Lustig's broader argument, this creates a powerful cycle. Processed foods can encourage consumption beyond genuine hunger, while their availability and aggressive marketing make them a constant presence in everyday life. Foods marketed as quick breakfasts, snacks, drinks, or convenient meals can become habitual parts of a person's routine without much thought. The author also challenges the idea that simply counting calories provides the complete answer to healthy eating. Two foods may contain similar amounts of energy but have very different effects on appetite, metabolism, and overall nutrition. For Lustig, what we eat and how food is processed matter alongside how much we eat. The deeper issue is therefore not just individual behavior, but the food environment itself. When highly processed products are inexpensive, convenient, heavily promoted, and readily available, making healthier choices can require considerably more effort. Ultimately, this section encourages readers to become more aware of what lies behind the foods they consume. Instead of focusing exclusively on calorie numbers, Lustig asks us to consider food quality, processing, ingredients, and their potential effects on metabolic health. Understanding this lure can be an important first step toward making more informed food choices. The lies about nutrition and health. In this section of Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig challenges several widely accepted ideas about nutrition and health. His central argument is that many conventional dietary messages have reduced a complex biological system to overly simple rules, particularly the belief that controlling calories alone is the key to preventing obesity and metabolic disease. Lustig argues that a calorie is not simply a calorie from the body's perspective. Different foods can influence hormones, appetite, blood sugar regulation, fat storage, and metabolism in different ways. Therefore, focusing exclusively on calorie intake may overlook important biological mechanisms that determine how the body responds to food. The author also questions the long-standing emphasis on reducing dietary fat as a universal solution to better health. He points out that when fat was removed from many processed products, manufacturers often replaced it with refined carbohydrates and added sugars to maintain taste and appeal. This shift, he argues, may have contributed to an environment in which highly processed foods became increasingly common. Another important issue is the way nutrition research is communicated to the public. Dietary recommendations can change over time as scientific understanding develops, while simplified headlines often turn complicated research into absolute rules. Lustig encourages readers to look beyond popular nutrition slogans and examine the underlying evidence. He also emphasizes the distinction between food and nutrients. Instead of judging foods solely by individual components, such as fat, carbohydrates, or calories, he encourages a broader perspective that considers how whole foods interact with the body's metabolic processes. Ultimately, this section invites readers to question nutritional assumptions they may have accepted without examining them. Lustig's message is not that every traditional recommendation is wrong, but that nutrition is more complicated than simple calorie arithmetic or isolated nutrient targets. By understanding the science more critically, readers can become better equipped to distinguish evidence-based guidance from oversimplified claims and make more informed decisions about what they eat. Sugar, the hidden driver of metabolic disease. In this section of Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig examines the role of sugar in the growing problem of metabolic disease. He argues that sugar, particularly when consumed in large amounts through highly processed foods and sweetened beverages, can have effects that extend far beyond simply adding calories to the diet. Lustig places particular attention on fructose, a type of sugar that is processed primarily by the liver. According to his argument, excessive consumption of added sugars can place a significant metabolic burden on the liver and contribute to processes associated with insulin resistance, fatty liver, and other metabolic problems. One of the important ideas presented is that sugar can influence the body's regulation of hunger and energy storage. Highly sweetened foods and drinks can provide substantial amounts of sugar without creating the same sense of fullness that comes from many minimally processed foods. This can make it easier to consume excessive amounts without realizing it. Lustig also challenges the idea that sugar is merely an issue of willpower. He argues that added sugars have become deeply embedded in the modern food environment, appearing in many products that consumers may not immediately recognize as particularly sweet. This widespread availability makes limiting sugar more difficult than simply avoiding desserts. Another key point is the distinction between naturally occurring sugars in whole foods and added sugars in processed products. Whole fruits, for example, contain fiber and other nutrients that influence how the body processes their naturally occurring sugars. In contrast, sugary drinks and highly processed foods can deliver concentrated amounts of sugar rapidly. Ultimately, Lustig presents excessive added sugar consumption as an important factor in the modern metabolic crisis. The section encourages readers to look beyond calorie counts and pay closer attention to where sugar comes from, how much is consumed, and how it interacts with metabolic health. His broader message is that improving food quality may be an important part of addressing chronic disease. Calories, food, and the science we misunderstood. In this section of Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig challenges the idea that calories alone can explain weight gain and metabolic disease. For decades, the common message has been straightforward: consume fewer calories, exercise more, and the body will naturally lose weight. Lustig argues that this approach is incomplete because it overlooks the complex biological processes that determine how the body responds to different foods. A central idea is that the source of calories matters. Food is not simply fuel measured in identical units. Different foods can affect hormones, appetite, blood glucose, insulin, and fat storage in different ways. Two foods containing similar amounts of energy may therefore produce very different physiological responses. Lustig places particular emphasis on the role of insulin and metabolic regulation. When the body's hormonal signals encourage energy storage, reducing food intake through willpower alone may not address the underlying biological factors driving hunger and weight gain. This helps explain, in his view, why conventional calorie restriction strategies can be difficult to sustain. The section also examines how modern food processing has complicated the calorie equation. Highly processed foods can be easy to consume quickly and may contain concentrated amounts of refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Their effects on appetite and metabolism may differ substantially from those of minimally processed foods. Rather than completely dismissing calories, Lustig's argument is that calorie balance is an outcome of metabolism, not necessarily the whole cause of metabolic problems. The body regulates energy through interconnected hormonal and biological systems, meaning that simply counting calories may fail to capture the full picture. Ultimately, this section encourages readers to move beyond the simplistic idea that all calories are metabolically equivalent. Lustig invites us to consider food quality, processing, hormones, and metabolic health together. Understanding these relationships, he suggests, can provide a more useful framework for thinking about weight, nutrition, and chronic disease. How modern food disrupts our metabolism. In this section of Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig explores how the modern food environment can interfere with the body's natural metabolic processes. His argument centers on the dramatic shift from traditional, minimally processed foods towards an abundance of highly processed products containing refined carbohydrates, added sugars, and other concentrated ingredients. Lustig explains that metabolism is not simply a matter of calories going in and calories going out. It is controlled by complex hormonal and biological signals that influence hunger, energy use, blood sugar, and fat storage. When these systems are repeatedly exposed to an unhealthy dietary environment, metabolic regulation can be impaired. One of the major concerns is the widespread consumption of ultra-processed foods. These products are often designed to be convenient, inexpensive, highly palatable, and easy to consume in large quantities. Their altered structure and concentrated ingredients can make them very different from the whole foods from which they originated. Added sugar receives particular attention because excessive consumption can place stress on metabolic pathways, especially in the liver. Over time, this may contribute to problems such as insulin resistance and fatty liver disease, which are associated with broader metabolic dysfunction. Lustig also emphasizes that the modern food environment makes individual choices more complicated. People are constantly surrounded by packaged snacks, sweetened beverages, fast food, and aggressively marketed convenience products. As a result, unhealthy eating patterns can become routine rather than occasional. The solution, according to the broader message of the book, is not simply to obsess over calorie numbers. Instead, consumers should pay greater attention to food quality, processing, added sugars, and overall dietary patterns. Ultimately, this section presents metabolism as a system that can be influenced by the environment in which we live and eat. By shifting towards more whole, minimally processed foods and becoming more aware of what goes into everyday products, people may be able to support healthier metabolic function and reduce some of the risks associated with modern chronic disease. The role of the liver in metabolic health. In this section of Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig highlights the liver as one of the body's most important organs for maintaining metabolic balance. The liver plays a central role in processing nutrients, regulating blood glucose, managing fats, and handling substances that enter the bloodstream. Because of these responsibilities, what we eat can have a significant impact on liver health. Lustig places particular emphasis on excessive consumption of added sugars, especially fructose. Unlike glucose, which is used throughout the body, much of the fructose we consume is processed by the liver. When intake becomes excessive, the liver may convert some of this excess into fat. Over time, this process can contribute to the development of fatty liver and other forms of metabolic dysfunction. The section also connects liver health with broader problems such as insulin resistance, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. When the liver becomes overloaded or less responsive to metabolic signals, the body's ability to regulate blood sugar and energy storage can be affected. This demonstrates why metabolic disease cannot always be understood by looking at body weight alone. Another important message is that not all sources of sugar affect the body in exactly the same way. Whole foods, such as fruit, contain fiber and other nutrients that influence how quickly their sugars are consumed and processed. Highly processed foods and sugary beverages, however, can deliver concentrated amounts of sugar with little nutritional complexity. Ultimately, Lustig presents the liver as a crucial link between diet and metabolic health. Protecting it requires more than simply reducing calories. It involves paying attention to food quality and limiting excessive amounts of added sugar and highly processed foods. The broader lesson is simple but powerful. A healthy metabolism begins with understanding what happens to food after we eat it. By appreciating the liver's role, we can better understand how everyday dietary choices may influence long-term health.
Modern medicine: why treatment isn't always the answer. In this section of Metabolic,
Robert H. Lustig questions whether modern medicine always addresses the real causes of chronic disease. He does not reject medical treatment itself. Instead, he challenges an approach that can focus heavily on managing symptoms while leaving the underlying metabolic problems untouched. Lustig argues that many chronic conditions, including obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and fatty liver disease, are interconnected. Treating each condition separately can sometimes overlook the common factors that contribute to them, particularly poor diet, metabolic dysfunction, and an unhealthy food environment. A major theme is the difference between treating symptoms and addressing causes. Medications can be extremely valuable when appropriately prescribed, but they may control a biological consequence without eliminating the factors that created the problem. For example, lowering a measurable health marker may improve that number, while the broader metabolic dysfunction continues. The author also examines how society has come to rely on medical solutions for problems that are partly shaped by lifestyle and environmental factors. When highly processed foods are widely available and chronic diseases become increasingly common, medication alone may not be enough to reverse the larger trend. Lustig therefore calls for a broader perspective in healthcare, one that places greater emphasis on prevention, nutrition, metabolic health, and the underlying causes of disease. Instead of waiting for illness to develop and then treating its consequences, he advocates addressing risk factors earlier whenever possible. The key message is not that medicine is unnecessary. Rather, modern healthcare works best when treatment and prevention complement each other. Medical intervention can be essential, but long-term health may also depend on changing the conditions that contribute to disease in the first place. Ultimately, this section encourages readers to think beyond prescriptions and procedures and to ask a deeper question. Are we only managing the consequences of modern disease, or are we also addressing why these diseases are becoming so common? Reclaiming metabolic health through better food. In this section of Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig shifts the focus from understanding the metabolic crisis to considering what individuals and society can do about it. His central message is that improving metabolic health begins with changing the quality of the food that surrounds us. Lustig argues that healthy eating should not be reduced to simply counting calories or following temporary diets. Instead, the emphasis should be placed on real, minimally processed foods that provide nutrients and retain their natural structure. Vegetables, fruits, whole foods, healthy sources of protein, and foods rich in fiber can form the foundation of a more supportive dietary pattern. A major target is ultra-processed food, particularly products containing large amounts of added sugar and refined carbohydrates. These foods can be highly convenient and appealing, but frequent consumption may make it harder to maintain healthy eating habits and metabolic balance. Reducing them can therefore be an important step toward improving overall diet quality. Lustig also emphasizes that individuals should learn to look beyond packaging and marketing claims. Words such as low-fat, natural, or healthy do not necessarily tell the complete story. Reading ingredient lists and understanding how foods are processed can help consumers make more informed choices. Another important idea is sustainability. A healthy approach should not depend on extreme restrictions or short-term dieting. Instead, it should involve practical changes that can become part of everyday life. Improving food quality, reducing excessive added sugar, and choosing less processed options can gradually create a healthier dietary environment. Ultimately, Metabolic presents better food choices as more than a strategy for controlling body weight. They're part of a broader effort to support metabolic function and long-term health. The message is empowering. While the modern food environment presents serious challenges, individuals can still take meaningful steps by becoming more informed about what they eat and choosing foods that nourish rather than simply satisfy hunger. Conclusion: taking back control of your health. In the conclusion of Metabolic, Robert H. Lustig brings together his central message. The modern health crisis cannot be solved by focusing on calories, weight, or medications alone. True health requires a deeper understanding of how food, metabolism, lifestyle, and the environment interact. Lustig emphasizes that many chronic diseases are connected to metabolic dysfunction. Rather than treating each condition as an isolated problem, he encourages readers to look at the underlying factors that contribute to poor metabolic health. Among the most important is the modern food environment, where highly processed foods and products containing excessive added sugar are widely available and heavily promoted. The conclusion reinforces the importance of food quality over simplistic calorie counting. Choosing more whole and minimally processed foods, eating adequate fiber, and reducing excessive added sugar can be practical steps towards supporting metabolic health. These changes are not presented as a quick fix, but as part of a long-term approach to healthier living. Lustig also stresses that individuals should become informed consumers. Understanding food labels, questioning marketing claims, and recognizing how processed foods can influence eating habits can help people make more conscious decisions. At the same time, the book does not suggest abandoning modern medicine. Medical treatment remains important when disease requires it. Instead, Lustig calls for a better balance between treatment and prevention, with greater attention given to addressing the factors that contribute to chronic disease in the first place. Ultimately, taking back control of your health begins with knowledge. When people understand how their food choices and environment can influence metabolic health, they are better equipped to make thoughtful decisions. The final message is one of empowerment. You may not be able to control everything about the world around you, but you can become more informed about what you put on your plate and how you care for your health. Small, consistent choices can become meaningful steps toward a healthier future. As we come to the end of Metabolic, the lure and the lies of processed food, nutrition, and modern medicine, we're left with a powerful message. Our health is influenced by far more than calories, weight, or a single number on a scale. Robert H. Lustig invites us to look more deeply at the relationship between food and the human body. Throughout the book, he explores how highly processed foods, excessive added sugar, and the modern food environment can affect metabolic health. He challenges the idea that nutrition can be reduced to simple formulas and encourages us to consider the quality and processing of the foods we eat. One of the book's most important lessons is that understanding the body matters. The liver, hormones, appetite, blood sugar regulation, and metabolism are all interconnected. When these systems are repeatedly exposed to an unhealthy dietary environment, problems can develop over time. The book also encourages us to think differently about modern medicine. Medical treatment can be essential, but addressing the underlying factors that contribute to chronic disease is equally important. Prevention, better nutrition, informed choices, and sustainable habits can all play a role in supporting long-term health. After listening to this audiobook summary, perhaps the most valuable takeaway is not a specific diet or a single rule. It is the importance of becoming more conscious of what we eat, questioning what we are told, and making informed choices based on knowledge rather than confusion. Remember, better health does not necessarily begin with a dramatic transformation. Sometimes it begins with one better choice, one better meal, and one new piece of knowledge. If this audiobook summary gave you a new perspective on food, health, or the way we live, subscribe to Wiser Reads and join our growing community of curious minds. Every book we discover together is more than a story. It is a new opportunity to learn, grow, and become wiser. Stay with us, because the next idea you discover might change the way you see your life.